From issues to practical solutions. Surgical castration without pain relief is painful to the piglet. And this is why there is a growing consensus, at least in Western countries in Europe, that it should be discontinued. There are currently 3 possible alternatives: surgical castration with pain relief, Immunic castration, also known as vaccination against Ball Taint, and raising entire males, in which the testes are just left and the animal, no castration. IPEMA focused on 2 alternatives, Immunic castration and entire males, that we considered as mid-term and long-term solutions, whereas surgical castration with pain relief was considered more as an intermediate solution for the short term. IPEMA aimed at clarifying the issues associated with Immunic castration and entire males, to sort out real issues, based on evidence and based on science, from mere opinions. Gathering the available information on practical solutions, to address the issues and problems. What are the issues associated with entire males? We first have husbandry and welfare problems. Entire males are more aggressive, and they exhibit mounting behavior which can be detrimental to their pen mates. The second issue is ball taint, an unpleasant odor and flavor that can be perceived in the meat from some entire male pigs. Finally, we have other meat quality issues such as the amount of fat in entire males, which can be insufficient for processing dry cured products. The quality of fat. Entire male pigs deposit more unsaturated fatty acids that result in softer fat and fat that is more prone to rancidity, which is again a problem for dry cured products. Meat from entire males is also less tender and has a lower water holding capacity. It is important to realize that all those issues in entire males come from sexual maturation. The steroids produced in the testes are responsible for the better performance, which is nice, but also for sexual and mounting behaviors and meat quality issues, including ball taint. In Immunic castration, a vaccine is injected to the animal that inhibits steroid production by the testes. Immunic castration is effective only after the second vaccination. Before the second vaccination, animals behave and perform like entire males. And it takes about 4 weeks after the second vaccination for Immunic castration to be fully effective. Unwanted behaviors disappear quickly after the second vaccination. The advantage in performance acquired before the second vaccination becomes less and less with the time after the second vaccination. The meat quality problems associated with entire males also decrease gradually with time. Lack of fat toughness and reduced water holding capacity reversed quite quickly to become similar to castrates. And saturation of fat takes longer to be reversed. What are the main issues associated with Immunic castration? Vaccination may result in some stress to the animals, particularly during the second vaccination in heavier animals. Some consumers and citizens may consider Immunic castration as not acceptable. Finally, one can have the same fat quality problems as in entire males. However, the longer the delay between the second vaccination and slaughter, the less serious are the meat quality problems, but also the less economic advantages are obtained. What are the solutions in practice? How can we manage husbandry and animal welfare? How can we manage pork quality at farm level? How can we manage pork quality at slaughter and at processing levels? Is the market ready for those alternatives? Are consumers open to alternatives?
The welfare issue has been a main driver for moving from piglet surgical castration to alternatives such as raising entire males. Adapted management strategies are needed to ensure that the welfare of entire males is not compromised by new or other welfare issues, such as social stress and injurious behavior. Entire males generally differ in their behavior from castrated males, independent from their stage of maturation. Their level of social behavior, exploration, and play is likely to be increased, suggesting that they may experience a high level of welfare, as long as we provide the resources to enable these behaviors, and prevent them from harm. However, due to increased testosterone production during sexual maturation, aggressive and sexual behaviors may compromise their welfare in common housing systems, in which there is usually limited space and structure to enable pigs to escape, and avoid harmful consequences from excessive social confrontations and sexual behavior. As a consequence, aggressive encounters and excessive sexual behavior, such as riding on the back of male or female pen mates, may cause injuries on their body, skin, or lameness. Also, the risk for penis wounds resulting from riding and bites from pen mates may increase. Housing females together with entire males increases the risk for unwanted early pregnancies. Mixing unfamiliar pigs in general, but particularly when mixing entire males, increases the risk for injuries, resulting from biting as a consequence of competition, and formation of social hierarchy. In addition, social stress during transport, and before slaughter, may not only compromise the welfare of entire males, but also increase at the same time the likelihood to contribute to the Ball Taint problem. How can we manage entire males to safeguard their welfare? First, keep entire males in socially stable groups, preferably even from birth to slaughter, by means of early socialization among litters after birth. Unless entire males are slaughtered before maturation, or immunocastrated before that time, they should be kept separate from females. Second, preferably keep entire males in structured pens, with separate functional areas for lying, dunging, and feeding, and even with hiding or escape compartments, which requires additional space in comparison to fully slatted pens. Third, the frequent provision of sufficient natural material, such as straw, spatially distributed on solid floor, to allow for synchronous exploration, chewing, and rooting is essential. Fourth, the provision of roughage silage, in addition to their regular concentrate diet, may reduce feeding motivation and stress, contributing to a sustained level of satiety. Entire males are superior in performance in terms of growth rate and feed efficiency, compared to castrates and females, provided that they are kept in a healthy housing environment with all needed resources. Aside of the prevention of the Ball Taint problem, the risk to exhibit injurious behavior, as a consequence of sexual maturation, is reduced in immunocastrated young boars, as they behave like castrates, after the second vaccination against Ball Taint, preferably applied before they become mature. This would, in addition, allow them to be housed in mixed-sex groups, as it would reduce the likelihood of unwanted early pregnancies. In conclusion, raising entire males, with or without additional immunocastration, seems to be a welfare-conform, preferred alternative to conventional surgical castration of pigs, provided that young boars are kept in a healthy and socially stable environment, with sufficient physical resources, as safeguarded by measures of enhanced animal care and management control.
How can we manage pork quality at farm level? It is undisputed that when reared under identical conditions, carcasses of entire males have a lower dressing percentage, greater lean meat content, and longissimus thoracis muscle cross-sectional area than those of surgical castrates. Furthermore, it has been shown that conformation of carcasses of entire males differs from that of surgical castrates, as they have larger forends and smaller hams, and their meat has a lower protein content. The lower carcass fat content is often associated with a lower intramuscular fat content. Depending on the average intramuscular fat content of the genetic line used, the decrease observed in entire males compared to surgical castrates or female pigs might impact sensory traits of pork like texture and taste. With regard to carcass and meat quality of immunocastrates, there seems not to be major issues compared to surgical castrates, which implies that no specific dietary regime targeting meat quality traits are necessary. The lower fat deposition usually results in a greater degree of unsaturation of the adipose tissue. From the human nutrition point of view, a greater amount of polyunsaturated fatty acids can be considered beneficial. However, from a meat processing perspective, soft tissue with an elevated level of mono and polyunsaturated fatty acids is less suitable. It causes smearing during meat processing, and fat with a high level of unsaturated fatty acids display a greater tendency for fatty acid oxidation, resulting in rancid or flavor of the products. The fatty acid composition of pork can be easily manipulated by selecting appropriate feed ingredients. This is because in pigs, the amount of ingested polyunsaturated fatty acid is closely related to the amount of polyunsaturated fatty acids that are deposited in both the subcutaneous and intramuscular lipids. Our possible strategy to increase the rather low amount of deposited intramuscular fat without altering carcass leanness is to reduce the protein/lysine to energy ratio of the diet. One has to be aware that applying this feeding strategy would go at the expense of the growth performance in that period prior to slaughter. To our knowledge, this strategy has not yet been tested in entire males. Thus, it remains to be established in modern lean breeds whether this feeding strategy would be successful. Dietary composition is one of the major factors regulating intestinal skeletal and indole synthesis. There is accumulating evidence, albeit not always consistent, that a dietary supplement with chicory root reduces skeletal. Including purified inulin into the diet produced similar results to chicory root, suggesting that inulin is one of the main components in chicory, responsible for the skeletal reduction. Another promising group of feed additives with a potential to reduce the levels of skeletal and indole in adipose tissue are the hydrolyzable tannins, secondary metabolites in many plants. Earlier studies demonstrated also that addition of raw potato starch offered as top dressing reduced skeletal levels. Other ingredients like lignin, cellulose, sugar beet pulp, and grass silage have also been proposed to reduce skeletal production. To improve pork quality, genetic selection can be used to lower ball taint incidence and improve carcass and meat quality traits. In general, lean pig breeds have lower androstenone and skeletal levels and are less susceptible to ball taint. Powertrain breed is cited as a fast way to decrease ball taint tissue, but breeding companies have been selecting sire lines against ball taint for the last years and are now able to offer specific lines for entire male production, such as Nador, Inodorus 2.0, or Eno. However, these sire lines only count for half the genetic of growing finishing pigs, the remaining coming from dam lines which have not yet been selected on ball taint. Genetic selection has contributed to leaner pigs, but has recently put more emphasis on carcass traits related to dressing yield and meat quality traits. The development of tomography can help to select on primal cut, for examples. There are also opportunities to further improve meat quality traits, such as drip loss or intramuscular fat. These criteria are known to be related to meat quality and can be selected, as well as phenotypes can be registered on live animals as intramuscular fat or at slaughterhouse as drip loss. Additionally, meat quality traits are lowly related to ball taint compounds. Selecting to improve tenderness will be more difficult as there are few easy measures of tenderness that can be used as selection criterion. Although there is evidence of a genetic determinism for fatty acid composition, it is not expected to be selected so easily. Raising entire males implies reconsidering pork quality in general. Ball taint tissue can be managed through a combination of genetics, husbandry, and nutrition, genetics being the most efficient for androstenone, and nutrition for skeletal. Fatty acid composition can be managed via nutrition, whereas genetics offers no real perspective. Intramuscular fat can be selected efficiently, whereas nutritional control is uncertain and likely at the expense of performance. Tenderness cannot be managed at farm level, neither by genetics nor by nutrition. Water holding capacity can be improved via genetic factors, nutrition has no effect. The solutions offered by nutrition may encourage to have a different management for males and females. On the long term, carcass and meat quality can be improved by selection, but it will affect both sexes. For example, if there is a selection to increase carcass fatness, it will also increase female carcass fatness. The best practices described to raise entire males are mainly focused on lowering ball taint. There is little evidence that slaughtering conditions for improving meat quality traits, such as drip loss or tenderness, might differ between males and females. Some husbandry conditions, specified for high-quality products with heavy pigs, will be highly challenging for raising entire males. Up to now, the only clear alternative for these conditions is immunicastration. How can we manage pork quality at slaughter and processing levels? Ball taint is assessed online or at line in some Belgian, Danish, Dutch, French, German, and Spanish slaughter plants using a sensory evaluation method known as human nose. Selection and training of the assessors is crucial in this methodology. The performance depends on heating method, heating practices, fatigue, and saturation, and number of assessors who evaluate each carcass. It also depends on the sensitivity and specificity of the assessor. Nevertheless, it is a useful method for carcass classification according to ball taint level. Ball taint can also be determined by measuring the main compounds responsible for it, androstenone and scatol. Scatol has been measured at line in Danish abattoirs for a long time, using a colorimetric technology. Carcasses with scatol levels higher than 0.25 ppm have a deduction on the price. The method is accurate enough for this purpose. But androstenone is not measured. Other technologies have emerged that could potentially be used in slaughter plants for ball taint classification. They are based on electrochemical biosensors, mass spectrometry, or Raman spectroscopy. They are promising, and some of them might be available in a mid-term or long-term future. Electromechanical biosensors, from the University of West England, give androstenone and scatol levels in a short time, without sampling or sampling pre-treatment. They are disposable, thus avoiding cross-contamination. Rapid, evaporative ionization, mass spectroscopy, REIMS, and Raman spectrometry measure fat composition. They can give an indirect evaluation of ball taint, provided that it is possible to calibrate them through a robust correlation between fat composition and levels of androstenone and scatol, which might prove difficult at industry level. The technology that arises as very promising, and is currently available on the market, is the tandem between laser diode, thermal desorption, ion source and mass spectrometry, LDTD-MS/MS. It is offered by the Danish Technological Institute, Phytronics, and MS vendors. The analysis is performed in less than 10 seconds, excluding the sampling and sample preparation time. The Danish solution also offers the possibility to automatize sampling and sample pre-treatment, allowing to get the result in less than 40 minutes, and to process up to 420 samples per hour. The cost is around €1 per sample for consumables, not including personnel, maintenance, and depreciation costs. It will be up to the slaughter plants to choose the cut-off levels for sorting out tainted carcasses, according to the risk they are prepared to take. Carcasses that are sorted out as tainted can be processed adequately, as we will see later on. As stated before, the integration in the slaughter plant of the technologies to classify carcasses according to ball taint and other meat quality parameters, such as intramuscular fat, fat quality, and water holding capacity, would be an interesting approach. There are large differences between entire males and castrates for muscle and fat quality. Regarding fat, the issues in entire males include high leanness and highly unsaturated fat, resulting in excessive softness and poor tissue cohesion. In immunocastrates, fat quantity and quality gradually change from entire male-like to surgical castrate-like after the second immunization. Solving the issue of entire male fat is difficult. Feeding the animals with more saturated fat is effective. Immunocastration is a good way to cope with this problem, especially by increasing the interval from second vaccination to slaughter. The issues related to muscle quality include color and pH deviations, inferior water holding capacity, and increased meat toughness. While the first two are mostly without practical importance, the last two problems are more serious. Measures to prevent color and pH deviations include reducing slaughter stress and aggression like adapted handling and prevention of mixing. Inferior water holding capacity and meat toughness may be prevented by optimized carcass cooling, adaptations of cotting, by preserving the muscle structure, storage at low temperature, fast freezing and thawing, cooking at lower temperatures for shorter time. Aging meat for a longer time has also been indicated as beneficial to prevent toughness. Meat and fat quality problems influence the quality of products. Producing dry-cured ham from entire males is problematic due to low adiposity and skin damage. This results in lower curing yields, tissue separation, increased saltiness, hard texture, dark color, and low aroma intensity. Entire males are therefore not recommended for dry-cured hams. If entire males are used anyway, processing conditions, duration, humidity, and circulation must be adapted to control drying. Immunocastrates are a better option, especially when extending the interval between the second vaccination and slaughter. Using entire males may also result in excessive drying of dry fermented products. Solutions include replacing fat from entire males with fat from castrates. Adaptation of processing, like slow drying process, adding less salt, and use of microbial cultures to improve aroma and texture. Producing bellies and bacon from entire males results in leaner products and lower processing yields due to tissue separation and lower brine retention. It is advisable to adapt the amount of injected brine and the duration of processing, slice at low temperature, and use water-binding agents. Use of immunocastrates is a good option, especially when extending the delay from second vaccination to slaughter. In other meat products, there are either no differences from the conventional raw material, or some indications of increased oxidation or emulsification problems. Close monitoring of processing and controlled use of antioxidants and water binders is therefore recommended. How to use meat with ball taint is another important topic when using entire males. It depends on the type of product, but also on factors like fat content and mode of consumption. The process of dry curing or dry fermentation alone does not sufficiently lower ball taint. In sausages, adding starter cultures and conventional spices can mask low to medium levels of ball taint. For high ball taint, only long and intensive smoking and or dilution with untainted material prevents ball taint perception. In fresh meat, ball taint can be avoided by the choice of leaner cuts. Thermal treatment potentially reduces ball taint. For this purpose, open cooking is better than closed. Frying in oil is better than roasting or baking. Grilling is better than cooking in water and in vacuum. Marinades, containing liquid smoke or spices, can mask low to medium ball taint levels. Embedding in breadcrumbs and serving in a complex meal can also help. Again, for higher ball taint levels, only long and intensive smoking and or dilution with untainted material can prevent ball taint perception. Cold consumption of products, like cooked ham or emulsion-type sausages, greatly decreases the perception of ball taint. Process like brine injection and cooking decrease ball taint. Further masking can be obtained by adding polyphosphates, flavor enhancers, and spices with distinctive flavors. This will be effective for low to medium ball taint. In highly tainted products, raw materials should be diluted by 50 to 70%.
Is the market ready to accept alternatives to surgical castration? Castration is a difficult and complex issue, whereby we observe that there are strong stakeholder opinions that are not always bothered by knowledge. We see lack of information sharing, and provision of incentives within the supply chain, and no clarity on equitable distribution of costs and returns across supply chain partners. At the same time, we are making more and more progress to end castration. We have more scientific evidence on the do's and don'ts. We have clarity about what the market wants, in terms of quality specifications. And major pork supply chains successfully introduced market concepts, supported by genetic programs, that have substantially reduced boar taint prevalence. And also the fact that farm-level feed cost for non-castrated pigs turned out to be lower. Large differences exist between countries in producing and marketing non-castrated pigs. UK, Ireland, Spain, and Portugal have a long tradition with entire males. In the last decade, companies in the Netherlands and Belgium have made a strategic move towards ending castration. And also in France and Germany, the number of non-castrated pigs gradually increased. But in several other countries within the European Union, there is still little or no sense of urgency to end castration. We have learned that realizing market acceptance depends on boar taint and on fat quality. Consequent detection of boar taint, as a safety net at the slaughter line, is crucial. Farm-level management and housing systems can of course play a supportive role, but not replace detection. With less back fat thickness, some carcasses become too lean, and less suitable, for example for marketing dry hams. And also fatty acid composition influences fat firmness. For both quality attributes, boar taint and fat quality, preventive measures are available, such as genetics and feeding. The last point regarding our learned lessons, still, perceptions exist on immunocastration and boar taint. More specific on the product quality specifications. For fat quality, lean carcasses should have at least 12 mm back fat thickness for marketing dry hams. And bellies should have not more than 15% polyunsaturated fatty acids, and an iodine value of not more than 70. For boar taint prevalence, sufficiently low percentages, in the range of 2 to 3%, of tainted carcasses, enable masking strategies to be an effective tool. Farmers will be induced to implement effective genetics and feeding measures, with appropriate incentives, and an equitable distribution of costs and returns. This is of course easier within integrated supply chains. Remaining issues are on intrinsic quality. That outdoor housing provides a high risk of boar taint prevalence. And that more incentives on fat quality are needed, above the existing focus on feed efficiency. Regarding extrinsic quality, perception is still important, perception by market actors in third, Asian markets. And consumer perceptions in relation to vaccination. Concluding comments on market readiness. Ending piglet castration is a long-term and complex process. But we are better and better unraveling reactions of consumers on meat from non-castrated pigs. Only supply chain-wide solutions will really work. Given this, we may conclude that pork supply chains are better and better equipped to become successful. Still we have some open ends. The potential of available knowledge is not fully utilized. And the role of feeding, as a direction for solution, is still not enough in the picture. The final message regarding whether the market is ready: objectivity and fact-based working are key factors.
What do consumers accept? Surgical castration of piglets has been strongly contested by animal welfare organizations during the past 20 years. Different alternatives are fully or partly implemented in some countries over time, but not yet all. Each of the alternatives has pros and cons. For application of anesthesia, mainly practical, legal, and economic aspects play a role. For entire males, it has already been discussed that market acceptance is hampered by meat quality, including the possible presence of ball taint. Immunic castration can help to overcome these issues. However, large-scale implementation is hampered because consumer acceptance of this practice is questioned by stakeholders in the pig chain. More insights in this consumer acceptance is thus needed. A better understanding of which alternative is acceptable to whom and why may increase insights and stimulate implementation. But first, we also need to know how well consumers are aware of piglet castration. With some variation between studies, 40 to 50% of the consumers indicate to be aware that male pigs are castrated. Knowledge on this topic strongly differs, depending on their background, age, and agricultural involvement. Only few people know the term ball taint, and probably even less consciously experience this off-odor. This implies that information needs to be given when studying attitudes in this field. Which piece of pork consumers want to buy may depend on the information, beliefs, and knowledge, convenience, and taste of the meat, whether it is healthy or not, and the price. For the different options of male pig production, it is assumed that consumers mainly consider a trade-off between animal welfare, taste, and food safety. Within the cost action, a large-scale online consumer survey has been set up to study consumer attitudes in 16 countries, spread over the European continent. More than 4,000 answers were collected, with at least 175 answers per country. Participants in the survey received some information on surgical castration and its alternatives before completing the questionnaire. Consumers were asked if they agreed with statements regarding, if labeled, "I'm willing to buy," "do consider it totally safe," "it is best for animal welfare," and "best option regarding tastiness." Willingness to buy was highest for the practice of anesthesia, followed by Immunic castration and balls, whilst being lowest for surgical castration without anesthesia. Overall, consumers agreed that each of the options were safe, with the highest score for castration with anesthesia, followed by castration without anesthesia, and equal results for balls and immunocastrates. As found in other studies, consumers do rely on the confidence they have in food safety in general, and the agencies that control it. The results are much more outspoken for animal welfare, with a very low score for surgical castration without anesthesia, compared to the three alternative methods. Balls and immunocastrates scored slightly lower than the application of anesthesia. If it comes to tastiness, consumers scored application of anesthesia clearly higher, and also immunocastration slightly higher, compared to castration without anesthesia, whilst balls scored lower. This is also reflected in the results for acceptability. Overall consumer acceptance was lowest for surgical castration without anesthesia. 65% of the respondents rejected this method due to its negative effect on animal welfare, stipulating the importance of moving towards alternatives, whilst each of the alternatives is clearly better accepted. Castration with anesthesia, or guaranteeing elimination of pain during the castration, had the highest acceptance, with almost 90%. Consumers considered this alternative better for animal welfare, taste, and safety. Of course, this requires a practically and economically feasible, good and correct implementation of this practice in the field, to comply with attitudes and expectations of stakeholders, as well as of consumers. Also, immunocastration had a high acceptability of 68%. Production of boars had a moderate acceptability of 48%, but consumers were less convinced about the tastiness of the meat. Overall, a higher acceptance can be anticipated if the risk for ball taint can be limited by reduction of ball taint, or reliable detection of tainted carcasses at the slaughter line and valorization of tainted carcasses. The acceptance of the alternatives, however, also differs between consumers, depending on, for example, their gender, age, cultural background, and involvement in agriculture, and how they outweigh the alternatives for welfare, food safety, and taste. 3 groups of consumers were identified in this study. The largest group of consumers can be considered contra-surgical castration, pro-anesthesia, and pro-Immunic castration. These consumers made their decision based on animal welfare and taste. The second group also disagrees with surgical castration without pain relief because of animal welfare, but has no outspoken opinion about the 3 alternatives, mainly because they were less familiar with this topic. The third and smallest group was neutral to the surgical castration without pain treatment, and positive towards the application of anesthesia. This group was more negative towards balls and Immunic castration. In general, it can be concluded that although less than 50% of the consumers are aware of surgical castration, the major share of consumers strongly rejects this practice because of animal welfare when they hear about it. Acceptability was only 27%. Acceptability of the alternatives differs, depending on the importance given to animal welfare, taste, and safety in the consumer's decision. Overall, each of the alternatives clearly had a higher acceptability than the practice of surgical castration without anesthesia. Almost 90% of the consumers accept castration with anesthesia, and this is the case for all types of consumers. Close to 70% also accept Immunic castration, despite reservations by some consumers. About 50% accepted balls as alternative. Further increase can be achieved if ball taint-free meat can be guaranteed on the market.
Let's try now to summarize our main conclusions and take-home messages. Raising entire males is not as easy as raising castrates, because they are more restless and aggressive. However, this can be dealt with. Some farmers have learned by themselves how to adapt their husbandry practices. There is also a good corpus of science-based results that can help in defining good practices to raise entire males. Acceptability of entire males is less, because consumers have concerns about taste of the meat, which is indeed less good on average, in terms of tenderness, and possible presence of ball taint. There is also major concerns about the use of meat from entire males to process dry-cured products. Meat quality issues associated with entire males must therefore be addressed seriously. We now have good tools to reduce the incidence of ball taint to low levels. But it is not possible to guarantee 100% ball taint-free with entire males. It is therefore advisable to check for ball taint on the slaughter line. To do that, human nose methods are cheap and easy, they however have important limitations. Instrumental methods, that are technically feasible, are coming. Other meat quality issues can also be addressed via nutrition and genetics. Selection goals must find a compromise between performance and quality. With immunocastration, economic gains on performance are less than with entire males. But meat quality issues are also less important. Once again, one has to find out their own compromise between performance and quality. The delay between second immunization and slaughter is a convenient tool to achieve that. The results of the last survey suggest that consumers can readily accept immunocastration, provided that they are informed. For both alternatives, entire males and immunocastration, the various partners in the supply chain must work hand in hand, agree on a compromise between performance and quality, and share costs and benefits in a fair way. Thank you very much for your attention.